we wanted to be able to make good deals throughout the world. And we didn't want to have independent government getting in our way, let alone communist government would make it much harder for us to do business, even though the communist government of Vietnam was willing to make concessions, to the United States before, at the beginning of the war. They weren't the best, we wanted more, but they were willing to make even deals with the South Vietnamese to allow some sort of autonomy or independence of South Vietnam. We'd get our wish of having a democratic state, but it wasn't everything we wanted, and that obviously wasn't enough. So we ended up, being behind the assassination of Diem, and I think it was 1964, who was a South Vietnamese leader who was kind of more of the independence mindset. I think he wanted to make a deal with the North Vietnamese, kind of a cooperation arrangement, might even have led to a single government. But it, would have been more of a capitalistic model, which would have been more, what we were talking about at that time. So, we pushed too far, and we pushed too far, we pushed too hard, and we were, just extremely, we did stuff that have led to, PTSD problems among the Vietnamese and American soldiers, and a lot of health and mental and social and physical problems, way more so among the Vietnamese, but even among American soldiers, really destroyed both, especially Vietnam, but the lives of many Americans as well. And that's not a sustainable strategy. And there's not very, we already have a hornet's nest that's kind of growing. Hornet's nests are people who are mad in the Middle East at what we've done to them, mad in Pakistan at the drone strikes, mad in Yemen at the drone strikes, mad elsewhere in the world at the drone strikes. And they don't realize that most of the American population doesn't want this to happen. They don't want drones going out there killing wedding parties. They don't want drones, creating collateral damage. That's not what the American people want. We truly don't. We desire to connect. We desire to go over there on vacation and visit the people, see the towns, connect with the people, maybe have lunch or have dinner. That's what American people want to do, because we're a pluralistic society. That's a gospel that we really wanted to spread to the world, that we are a society of pluralism that wants to connect with other nations, wants to be able to explore the world, and have them come over here and come to our universities, be able to work for companies in the United States. Well, United States citizens can work abroad as well, have a greater flow, a more integrated approach that would, a flow of people that more closely resemble something like the European Union, except on a global scale, where everybody's autonomous, everybody's independent, the rights are respected, and that's not quite so much the case in the European Union, and that's where a lot of the nationalistic movements are getting a lot of their vigor from, is the fact that there is, the European Union is not very representative of the population or the demands of the population. It's not giving enough autonomy to various members, and it's really beginning to be impacted by pressures from international corporations, from financial institutions to impose austerity measures on their populations, and it's causing it's a one-size-fits-all shirt that's not working for many of the nations. So, but it still has a lot of benefits for the people there. That can be a model. Some of the good aspects of it can be a model for greater global cooperation, which much of the world desires. China desires that, and their development efforts throughout the world. In Africa, they just built a railway from Eritrea to Ethiopia. People over there are enthusiastic about it. It's a beautiful railway. Why can't we? And there's desire among millions of Americans to be able to do that, to connect and to help empower nations throughout the world to develop themselves. Because the only way that any sort of progress or and any sort of prosperity is going to have not progress, but prosperity, because progress is a very, it's different, to, for everybody. Progress is different for everybody. It's a very individual thing. There's nothing really to progress to, but you can become more prosperous. You can have more freedom. And I think we want, people all throughout the world to have more freedom to pursue the passions of their hearts and minds, and to be able to give more to everybody else in the world. And to do that, obviously starting with providing the basic necessities of, water, electricity, food, housing, basics of education, basics of ways of options, that is, increasing the options that are available to people throughout the world to pursue things that are more in line with what they're interested in, so they can better give to the rest of us. I think that's a great desire by most of the population here. And we can't express that. We're being held back in cages by this foreign policy of chase a terrorist down to the farthest part of the world. We're living in fear to the nth degree. Chase, it's just like, there cannot be enough terrorists, to chase down. It doesn't matter if the terrorists in Antarctica, we gotta hunt them down, because who knows, some terrorists in Antarctica can come over here to the United States. So we're just in constant fear, constant military production, constant, which is great for the military industrial complex, to have this sense of fear that we just have to keep on pushing the terrorists out, just kind of pushing them out. While at the meantime stirring up, more people who are enraged by the injustices that are being done on them, by the destruction of their lives, their families, their, places of worship, their places of communal gathering, their places of connection to the world and all that is, whether that be a hillside or whether that be a cafe on the street. That has been destroyed, from Aleppo to Tripoli to Damascus to Mosul. Those places have been destroyed, and those cities have been obliterated. Prosperous. Syria, Libya, Iraq were among the most prosperous countries, most well-educated countries, with people who were more than willing, who are more than willing to kind of collaborate with us, and collaborate their expertise and their knowledge, and help us grow as a nation. Where there could have been a great symbiotic relationship between people of these countries who were extremely, well educated, extremely, who did not have a bad opinion of America, because we weren't doing as many bad things to them at that time. And who now there needs to be a reconciliation process. Reconciliation process for all the damage that has been done. There needs to be a healing of the wounds, so to speak, of for the people in Syria and Libya and Iraq. There needs to be a reconciliation effort, and I think most of America wants that. Most of America wants us to be a united world. We want to be a united world where we respect the individual autonomy and independence of everything down to the micro level. There's a big strand of libertarianism in America, and that's not just for us, it's for the whole world, that everybody has the freedom to direct their lives the way that they want to. And that's a huge American thing, and we can't tell it to the world, because right now our interests are not being represented by the government. Our interests, the interests of the American people, are not being represented by the drone strikes. They're not being represented by CIA-led efforts from the 1950s onward to whether that be overturning the democratically elected government of Iran in the 1950s and putting the Shah in place, or to overthrowing Indonesia, putting Indonesian government, putting Suharto in place, overthrowing Mubato, and mispronounce his words, sorry about that. And in Africa, who was a great leader there, Pinochet in Chile, to Honduran democratically elected government in 2013. We overthrew Gaddafi, even though he was willing to kind of ease out of power himself. He even made that offer to I'll step out of power, for crying out loud. Just blew that country apart, and and trying to and using our military efforts, and we're smart enough, our military is smart enough to know that it wasn't a wise decision to topple Saddam. It wasn't a wise decision to topple Gaddafi. It wasn't a wise decision to incite violence in Libya or Syria. It just wasn't wise. I mean, we're smart enough to know the dynamics, the history, the culture, the economics, and other aspects of the countries, to know that dog doesn't hunt. But it's kind of a variant, I guess you could say, of disaster. I would say disaster capitalism, maybe disaster politics. Disaster politics and disaster capitalism kind of married together to be able to overturn governments like Saddam, who would not, cooperate with, the interests of the World Bank or the IMF, who would not cooperate with pressure that we put on him, subsequent pressure that we put on, same with, Gaddafi, who would not cooperate with our demands to kind of get in to the oil industries in Libya, or get into the oil industries in Iraq, or, get into Syria. So, as a result, this is what you see, and obviously Libya did not turn out to be a very good election strategy for Clinton. As a Secretary of State, she really pushed the military action on Libya, and Obama, maybe one of his weaknesses as president, he tended to give in to pressure a little bit more. There's a lot of pressure in one direction. He tended to compromise with it, which is in some ways, the ways that he compromised were brilliant, but in some ways it didn't turn out very well. And I think Libya is one example of it. The compromising that he did with Clinton on her desire to liberate Libya from when they didn't have enough people put together, enough of a liberation movement to put together to do anything with it. And that's, if you look into the history of Libya after the 2010s onward, you can see that there was not enough of a revolutionary movement at that time to really govern the country. It wasn't put together. We were trying to cobble it together. Peace, kind of half-assed, and it fell apart, and you had insurgents, and you had a flow of weapons. Libya had a big cache of weapons there, and that's in the hands of militants, and migrant crisis in Europe, because Libya was kind of the bottle cap on that. Libya patrolled the Mediterranean, and so a lot of the migrants that were trying to cross into Europe, Libya kind of controlled that. That's kind of their cooperation agreement with Europe to kind of keep Europe off their backs. That's my guess of it. And Libya was, had enough oil, revenues to be rather prosperous, so it was kind of a magnet for people to kind of stay there. And there were a lot of social work programs, and water, and dam, irrigation, housing projects that Gaddafi did, despite his brutality. And I think that's why people didn't overthrow him sooner, because he was wise enough to know that when you get too brutal, you're not going to last very long. So all in all, I think that the strategies that we're pursuing, and we're going to continue to pursue, now that the mask is pulled off, now that we have Trump in power, let us rejoice that the mask is pulled off. Let us rejoice that we no longer have the mask of Obama on to kind of temper what's going on behind the scenes. That Obama couldn't mask it with, stuff that did benefit us and stuff that did help move the country in the right direction. But they're very small things, and kind of put us to sleep to really what was going on, that Obama really didn't have the power to control. And now the mask is off, and those people are, get the money while you can. Goldman Sachs, get the money while you can. Exxon, get the money while you can. Exxon, with the Treasury, Secretary of State,